Humanity is the cause of climate change, but it's not for the reason you think. Hi, my name is Veronica Anderson. I'm a visionary architect and an integral healer. I've devoted my life to creating truly sustainable projects that affect people at a communal level and an individual level. We know that the climate is changing, and we still continue down these patterns of destructive consumption, of mass oil production. And it seems as though we don't know how to stop. For decades, scientists, politicians, academics, and all kinds of respected world leaders have been sounding the alarm, saying that the climate is changing and it's not going to support humanity's continued survival. We know that we need to switch to ways of living that are sustainable, and yet we haven't. We still continue to extract oil from the ground when the amount of oil in the reserves in the United States alone could not be burned before the habitat of planet Earth became uninhabitable. So why are we stuck in this rut? Does humanity have a death wish? What will it take for us to shift to a way of living that is actually sustainable? What is sustainability? Well, it's the ability to be sustained. Our methods of production are not able to be sustained. And yet, for some reason, we're stuck in these old habits. I'm 29 years old, and I know that it's going to fall on my generation to make radical change in order for us to be able to be sustained as a society. By the year 2040, it will be too late to change the course of the changing climate. I'll be 50. And the rest of my life will already have been decided. That's too late. We have to start now. But how do we tackle such a huge problem? We have to look at the root. So why are we living in a way that is ultimately destructive to not just future generations, but ourselves? I'm going to tell you a story. And this story takes place in the Caribbean Sea. It happened a couple weeks ago. I took a bus from the town that I live in here in Costa Rica down the coast, and I ended up on an island in an archipelago called Bocas del Toro. And as I stood on that beach, looking out towards the crystal clear waters of the Caribbean Sea, I heard loudspeakers blasting music out into the ocean from the shore. I smelled the refuse of partygoers on the beach that had been stuck in the mangroves that lined the shore. And I heard the sound and smelled the fumes of jet skis and boats whizzing past me in the water as I closed my eyes and I looked within. My practice of architecture is about connecting to the planet, to the spirit of the planet, something we often refer to as Mother Earth, Gaia, Pachamama. As I followed my habitual ritual of tuning into the spirit of the earth as I entered into the water, I felt a sense that I often feel of entering into the cosmic womb of humanity. We all evolved from the sea, and there is still wisdom there for us at this precarious moment of balance or imbalance. And as I stepped into the ocean, I felt a sudden sense of clarity that this beach that was once a haven for starfish, a place for tourists to come and experience pristine nature, that had become a party spot, this was the reason for climate change. I heard the voice of Gaia whisper to me, this is why things must change. And I knew that the planet was consciously changing her climate as a response to humanity, her children's disrespectful attitude towards all of the gifts and blessings and boons that she has to offer. It was a sobering moment because as an architect focused on sustainability, I have spent so much time thinking about ways that we can fight climate change. But in that moment, I knew there was no fighting it. The seas are rising to wipe out harmful development that perpetuates an unsustainable relationship with nature. We see our natural resources as something to be consumed and used and taken advantage of for our own benefit. But we don't understand that the benefit of the earth is our own benefit. We have forgotten our dependence on the planet, and she will do everything in her power to show us the reality of our dependence on her systems. Because in the end, unity is always the goal. And the planet will do, consciously or unconsciously, will naturally tend towards balance. This is the real reason that humans are responsible for climate change, because we have forgotten the truth of our essence as dependence on the earth, part of the earth. So in that moment, I felt the spirit of the earth rise up in my conscious awareness to show me how the rising seas, the extreme weather events, all of these things which threaten our day-to-day existence are part of the plan to wake us up, to show us our interdependence on the planet and our relationship to her systems. In that moment, I knew that it would all be okay, that the rising tide of consciousness, which this conversation is a part of, which you are a part of through your participation in this conversation, is another unstoppable force. It's a force for good. People are listening. People are eager to change. They may not be the people with the most power, but they are a growing number, and we will reach the tipping point. So as we develop a greater consciousness of our relationship to the planet, we also develop a greater consciousness of ourselves as a society. And that's why we have to think about trauma. Because humans have been traumatized by nature for the entire history of our existence. Architecture is a part of that. We first built shelters from the elements in order to survive, to protect ourselves from animals, from cold, from heat, from rain and wind. We needed to separate ourselves from nature so that we could find safety and develop all of the systems and technology that we've come to identify with today. This has been good for our consciousness. This has been important in our evolution, but it's not the end. It's time now to come back to unity with nature. And architecture can also play a role in that. And not just the buildings that we normally think of when we talk about architecture, but the spaces between the buildings. The cities that contain the buildings. The way that we relate our infrastructure to the natural environment is how we express our true understanding of our relationship to nature and to the planet. So our society has some trauma recovery work to do when it comes to survival and nature. Why do we keep producing and extracting oil when we already have enough? Because we believe that it's not enough, that it'll never be good enough. We believe that we'll never be safe enough. We continue to produce oil and consume oil. This is the biggest problem with our relationship to the earth, which is causing the climate to change, is we think we can extract the lifeblood of our planet that has taken 13 billion years to create. All of that oil has collected over millions and millions of years, and we think there's no consequences to extracting it. This type of repeatedly harmful action that only hurts ourselves is a type of trauma patterning. We just can't stop hurting ourselves. We're stuck in a loop, like a broken record. And so all of us are responsible for correcting our own relationship to the earth and our own lives. This can only happen individually at first, until the conversation at a social and collective level is elevated to include the health of our relationship to the planet. So why is the climate changing? Because we made it. Because this is the only feedback loop that we could have chosen without our conscious awareness of our relationship with the earth. The earth is waking us up. The spirit of the earth is showing us that we are out of alignment with our relationship to our source. It's going to take healing, and it's going to be work that all of us have to do within our own lives to come into a spiritual relationship with the earth, to come into a conversation with the plants and the animals and the elements around us, to notice every day that the sun shines down on us through the sky and doesn't burn us instantaneously because of the atmosphere. To open the tap in your kitchen or flush the toilet and receive water that comes from high mountain streams or deep in the earth. To walk on earth. To remember the feeling of warm soil on the soles of your feet, or the smell of grass, or a freshly picked fruit. To feel the breeze on your face and understand that that is a caress of the entire living body of the planet Earth. Each of us has access to these type of spiritual experiences every day. Some of us live in cities and we have to work harder than others to access these type of experiences. But all of us are responsible for entering this kind of dialogue with the planet. And in doing so, we are doing our most immediate best to address climate change. And there's a special part of the conversation for architects, for city planners, for developers that are the stewards of the earth, landholders that have a responsibility to transform what has been pristine or undeveloped or relatively untouched land into something that is of value, not just financially, but spiritually. The earth is a living being. It is not a rock. It is not an inert, lifeless hunk of matter. It has its own rhythms. It has its own cycles. It has its own consciousness. We understand trees are all connected in a forest, that they all communicate between one another and they share resources and they sustain one another through times of distress. That is a type of intelligence. Arguably a higher intelligence than what I witness in humanity. People that are not landholders are also stewards of the earth. If you live in a city and there is a neighborhood development organization, I urge you to get involved, to hold the developers in your community responsible for this type of standard, that we are entering a period of enlightened relationship to our planet, that we understand this planet is part of our body and we are a part of the planetary body. Architects are especially charged now with stewarding planetary resources in a sustainable way. Transportation planners as well. Developers of every kind have an opportunity to create spaces that connect people and nature. Campus managers, mayors, property owners, house owners. These are all examples of people that can truly make a difference when it comes to the changing climate. We can all of these people especially, look deep within our patterns and our beliefs and our thoughts and find ways to come into deeper alignment with nature. And as we come into deeper alignment with nature, we will begin to develop in a way that is just and equitable, not just for other humans, but for all living beings on Earth, including the living being of Earth herself. This is the root cause of climate change, our separation from planet Earth. The belief in our separation from planet Earth, our independence from nature. The distance between us and the planet must shorten now. And we can all play a role in that. And as a young person with a lot at stake in this conversation, I implore you to search your own heart for the ways that you can deepen into trust and love and right relationship with the earth for the sake of my generation and those to come. Thank you.